It started with the sound of rain on tin. A soft, uneven rhythm tapping across the roof of the old garage, the kind of sound that fills silence with something you can almost breathe in. I hadn't meant to stay that long. My friend had run out for an errand, and I was left behind, tightening bolts on his mom's old bike. She was supposed to be inside. But when the door creaked open, she stepped in with a towel around her shoulders and that careful, apologetic smile, the kind people wear when they're used to taking care of everyone else. "Didn't think you'd actually fix it," she said, her voice warm but edged with disbelief. I laughed, rubbing grease from my hand onto a rag. "Guess I'm old-fashioned. I like making things work again." She leaned against the workbench, watching the rain slide down the glass. The space smelled of oil and wet earth. For a moment, I forgot she was my friend's mom. She looked tired, but not in a fragile way, more like she'd been holding her breath for years and hadn't noticed. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly. "He used to fix things just to see if he could." "Your husband?" I asked before I could stop myself. She shook her head, a faint, knowing smile crossing her lips. "No. Someone else." Something unspoken hung there, soft and heavy. I tightened another bolt, mostly to avoid her eyes. I'd seen her around for years, polite nods, quick hellos, but standing this close, I noticed everything I shouldn't. The faint coffee stain on her sweater sleeve. The way her fingers traced the rim of a chipped mug. The quiet between her sentences. "Eli," she said suddenly, my name landing with more weight than I expected. "Why are you always helping?" It wasn't the question itself, it was how she asked it. Like she wanted to understand something about me that I hadn't even figured out yet. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe I just like fixing things because I don't know how to fix myself." Her breath caught. A small, almost invisible pause. The rain outside grew heavier, blurring everything beyond the glass. Inside, time slowed, the hum of the fridge, the click of the wrench slipping from my hand. She bent to pick it up before I did, and for a second, our hands nearly touched. She didn't pull away first. We stood there, both pretending to look at the broken bike, both aware that something had shifted, something quiet but undeniable. "I should probably get this finished before your son gets back," I said, breaking the silence. "Right," she murmured, but she didn't move. Her gaze lingered, soft, uncertain, almost curious. Then, as if she'd caught herself feeling too much, she turned toward the window again. Outside, headlights swept briefly across the driveway. She exhaled. "That'll be him." But she didn't sound relieved. I nodded, heart pounding harder than it should have. The wrench was still in my hand, my shirt damp from sweat and rain. She looked at me once more, just long enough to leave a question hanging between us, one we both pretended not to hear. The garage door rattled as the car pulled in, and neither of us said another word. The next few days passed like static, small, ordinary sounds filling the silence, the hum of the fridge, the scrape of a chair, the low creak of the back door. I started coming by again, mostly to help finish the bike, or at least that's what I told myself. Clara, I'd finally learned to call her by her name, didn't ask why I kept showing up, and I didn't offer a reason. She made coffee. I worked with my hands. It felt safe that way. Still, every minute stretched too long, every glance lasted a second more than it should have. Sometimes she'd ask about school, about my art classes, about how I was managing to pay rent on that half-finished apartment I shared with two friends. Her tone was always casual, but I could tell she listened differently, like she was remembering something about being 20 and uncertain. I learned pieces of her story, too. Her husband had left 3 years ago. Not in a dramatic way, she said once, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Just quietly. Like someone forgetting to close a door behind them. She hadn't dated since. Her son, my friend, had moved back home for a while, but spent most days at work now. That was how I ended up there so often, half by coincidence, half not. One afternoon, I found her sitting on the floor of the garage, sorting through boxes. The air smelled like dust and citrus cleaner. She held up an old photo, her younger self with a paint-smeared hand, laughing at someone behind the camera. "I used to paint," she said. "Then life got louder." "You should start again," I said. She gave a small, tired smile. "At my age, you start running out of blank canvases." "You don't run out," I said. "You just forget where you stored them." That made her laugh, not loudly, but long enough that I could see what she looked like when she stopped guarding her joy. She handed me the photo, our fingers brushing for just an instant. The kind of contact that shouldn't mean anything, but did. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she cleared her throat. "You should go before he gets home." "Yeah," I said, though I didn't stand up right away. We both knew the problem wasn't timing, it was wanting something we weren't supposed to want. As I left, I caught my reflection in the window, her inside, standing near the boxes, her face turned slightly toward the door. The next morning, I found a text from her. "You left your wrench here." I hadn't. But I went back anyway. When I arrived, she was in the same spot as before, sleeves rolled, eyes softer than I remembered. She held the wrench out like a peace offering, and when I took it, she didn't let go immediately. The air between us felt full of things neither of us could say. And in that brief, still moment, I realized, this was how it started. Not with a word, not with a decision, but with the quiet understanding that we were already too close. The rain had come back. It always seemed to, whenever I was at her place. Clara opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been standing there already. Her hair was damp, her sleeves rolled, that familiar smudge of garden soil near her wrist. "You came," she said, not surprised, not pleased, just quietly resigned. "You texted. I wasn't sure you'd answer this time." I shrugged, stepping in. "You know I can't say no to unfinished projects." Her lips pressed into something between a smile and a sigh. "Right. The wrench." But the wrench was already on the table. I set my keys down beside it. The silence in the room was heavy, like it was holding its breath. We didn't talk about it, the messages, the glances, the way I kept showing up after promising not to. Instead, she handed me a box of tools. "The light in the hallway's loose," she said. I reached up to fix it, and she stood nearby, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. When I lowered my arm, my sleeve brushed hers. She didn't move. I turned. She was looking at me, not shy, not bold, just searching. "Eli," she started. The front door opened. Her son's voice echoed down the hallway. "Mom. You home?" We both froze. Clara's hand flew to my arm, guiding me back toward the kitchen. "He wasn't supposed to be, just, go." I slipped out the back door, heart hammering. Through the glass, I saw her walk into the living room, her face instantly rearranged into calm. I waited outside, under the eaves, soaked by the rain, until his voice faded upstairs. Then, through the half-open door, I heard her sigh, long, unguarded, almost breaking. When I finally left, she didn't see me go. Later that night, I got another text. "We can't keep doing this." Then another, seconds later, "I didn't mean that. I just don't know what this is." I typed 3 different replies before deleting all of them. 2 days passed. No messages. By the 3rd day, I found myself walking to her house again. I told myself I'd left my jacket there, but I knew that wasn't true. When she opened the door, she looked tired, not angry, just worn thin by pretending everything was fine. "I shouldn't have texted you," she said. "I know." She stepped aside to let me in anyway. We stood there, both wanting to speak, neither knowing what would make it worse. Finally, she said, "Eli, people talk. They always do." "Let them," I said before I could stop myself. Something flickered in her eyes, fear, maybe, or hope. She reached for the kettle, her hands shaking just enough for me to notice. "I'm not who you think I am," she said quietly. "Maybe you are," I said. "You just don't remember anymore." Her breath caught, like I'd said something she'd been waiting to hear. And then, from outside, a car door slammed. Her son again. We both turned toward the sound, hearts racing. For a moment, everything hung there, the smell of rain, the kettle starting to hiss, her hand still halfway to the counter. Neither of us spoke. But we both knew, this wasn't ending. Not yet. For a week, we didn't speak. No messages. No errands. No excuses. But silence has its own gravity, it pulls harder the longer it lasts. By Thursday, I found myself outside the shop again, pretending to look at the display window. She was inside, shelving books, her hair pulled back, her posture tight. When she finally looked up and saw me, something flickered across her face, not surprise, not even relief. Just exhaustion. She stepped out from behind the counter. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." "Then why are you?" "I don't know how to stop." That made her flinch, like I'd said something too honest. She locked the register and motioned toward the back door. "Come on. If my son shows up, it's better he doesn't see you." The storage room smelled like paper and rain again. Always the rain. She leaned against a shelf, crossing her arms, keeping distance. "This has to end," she said. "It's getting dangerous." "For who?" "For both of us." I took a step closer. She didn't move. "You think I don't know how this looks," she continued, her voice shaking now. "I've heard what people say about women like me. Alone too long, desperate for," she stopped herself. "And you're just a kid." "I'm not," I said quietly. "And you're not desperate." Her mouth tightened. "Don't make me the story you'll regret later." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she still thought she could protect me from something that had already happened. "It's not a story," I said. "It's just, you." She looked at me then, really looked, eyes searching, like she wanted to find a reason to stop feeling what she felt. But she couldn't. And neither could I. Her voice softened. "You don't know what you're doing to me." "Maybe I do." Her breath hitched. "Don't." I took another step. We were too close now, one breath apart, every unspoken thing between us suddenly loud. She turned away, but her voice cracked. "You think this is romantic? It's not. It's messy. It ruins people. Then why can't you tell me to go?" She didn't answer. The only sound was the rain against the roof and the uneven rhythm of her breathing. Finally, she whispered, "Because you see me, Eli. And I stopped being seen a long time ago." I didn't know what to do with that. I wanted to reach for her, to say something that could make it easier, but my hand stayed frozen at my sides. And then, the sound of the front door opening. A man's voice. Her ex-husband. She stiffened, eyes wide. "He shouldn't be here. Do you want me to go?" Her gaze darted to the doorway, then back to me. "I don't know." Footsteps grew louder, closer. She grabbed my wrist, pulling me behind a tall shelf. We stood pressed into the narrow shadowed space, her heart beat fast against my arm. The door handle turned. And everything that had been unsaid trembled on the edge of breaking. The next day, I didn't go to the shop. Or the next. Or the next after that. Every time I reached for my phone, I stopped. The last thing I remembered was her hand around my wrist, her eyes wide with something that wasn't fear, not exactly, but something close. Then her ex's voice had filled the air, casual, ordinary, and I'd slipped out the back door without looking back. I told myself it was over. But endings never feel like endings when there's still something left unsaid. By the 5th day, she texted. "We need to talk. Please." So I went. When I arrived, she was sitting on the porch, a blanket over her lap, a mug of coffee untouched beside her. She didn't look up right away. "You shouldn't have come," she said softly. "You asked me to." "I know. I shouldn't have." There was something off about her voice, the calm that comes after panic, not peace. "Clara," I said. "What happened?" She glanced toward the window. "He heard us. That night. Not everything, but enough." I felt my chest tighten. "He's told people." She shook her head. "Not yet. But he will. He called our son." That word, our, landed heavy between us. "He's furious," she said. "Not at you. At me. For embarrassing him. For," she stopped, swallowing the word that almost slipped. "For moving on." I sat down beside her. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her eyes flicked to mine, tired and wet at the corners. "Didn't I?" Neither of us spoke for a while. The sky was dimming, that dull, gray light before rain again. Finally, she said, "I told him it was nothing. That you were just helping. That it was my mistake." Her words cut through me sharper than I expected. "Your mistake," I repeated. "I had to," she said. "You don't understand what people will say. I don't care what people say." "I do." The words snapped out of her, sudden and raw. She took a breath, pressing her hand to her temple. "I can't lose what little I've managed to keep standing." I stared at her, not angry, just hollow. "So you'd rather pretend this never meant anything?" She turned her face away. "It's the only way it survives. The lie. The life." Rain started again, soft at first, then heavier. She didn't move to go inside. After a long silence, she said, "He told me I still wear my ring sometimes. He's right. I don't even notice when I do." She looked down at her hand. The ring was there, faintly glinting in the gray light. She slipped it off. Slowly. Deliberately. Then she placed it on the table beside her coffee and whispered, "Maybe I'm finally tired of pretending." Before I could speak, her phone buzzed. Her son's name lit the screen. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me, and for the first time, she didn't look scared. The storm hit hard that night. Power lines down, streets empty, sky pulsing with flashes of white. I hadn't planned to go back, but storms have a way of stripping away whatever excuses you build. Her porch light was out. The door was unlocked. Inside, candles flickered across the kitchen table. She was there, sitting in the half-light, that ring still lying beside the cold coffee from earlier. "You shouldn't have come," she said again, but there was no conviction left in it. "I heard the storm," I said. "Wanted to make sure you were okay." She laughed once, a dry, tired sound. "You always come when it rains." I shrugged. "Maybe that's the only time I feel brave." The silence stretched between us. Only the wind filled it, rattling the windows like a warning. Then she said quietly, "He came by again. My ex said he's talking to our son. Everyone's going to know soon." I nodded. "So what do we do?" She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, she didn't seem older or younger or anything measured by years. Just human. Just tired of lying. "I can't hide from what I feel anymore," she said. "But I don't know if I can live with it either." I took a step closer. "You don't have to decide right now." "Yes, I do," she whispered. "Because not deciding is already a decision." She stood, moving to the window. Lightning flashed across her face, every line, every trace of the life she'd lived before I ever showed up. "I keep thinking," she said, "what if this ruins you? What if I'm just a detour you'll regret when you finally know what you want?" I swallowed hard. "Maybe that's true. But maybe you're the first thing that ever felt real." She turned. The room went quiet except for the slow drip from the eaves outside. I could see her fighting it, the need to protect, the fear, the hope. All of it. Then she crossed the room and pressed her forehead against my chest. "Not an embrace, not yet, just contact. A surrender of distance." "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. "You already did," I said softly. "So did I." We stood like that, two people who'd run out of ways to lie to themselves. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet but steady. "Maybe love isn't about fixing things," she said. "Maybe it's just about letting someone see the mess and staying anyway." She took my hand. The candles flickered out as the power came back on, flooding the room with harsh electric light. We both blinked against it, caught, exposed, real. Then she whispered, "Tomorrow, everything changes." And I didn't know if that meant she'd choose me or walk away, only that, for once, neither of us was hiding. Morning came quiet. The storm had wrung out the world, streets washed clean, air sharp and cold. I parked a few houses away and walked the rest of the distance. Her porch light was still off. When she opened the door, she looked different, not softer or harder, just settled. Like she'd made peace with something. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded, and we sat at the same table where everything had almost started. The ring was gone. The mark where it had sat on her finger wasn't. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. Just real. Finally, she said, "He knows. My son too. It's out." I waited for the rest, the fallout, the panic. But she only sighed. "It's strange. I thought it would break everything. But all it did was make me realize how much I'd been breaking myself trying to keep everyone comfortable." I looked down at my hands. "So, what happens now?" "I don't know," she said. "He wants to talk. My son. I owe him that. And I need time to find out who I am outside all this." There was a sting behind her words, the truth I'd been avoiding. I forced a small smile. "You mean without me?" She didn't answer right away. "Maybe for a while," she said finally. "But not forever. Not if it still meant to matter." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine, a gesture too quiet to be goodbye, too gentle to be a promise. "I don't regret you," she said. "Even if it all falls apart. Especially then," she said. "Because it reminded me I could still feel something true." The sunlight shifted across the table, cutting through the leftover shadows. She stood and opened the window, the same sound as that first day in the garage, the rain tapering off, the smell of something clean and new. I wanted to tell her I'd wait, that I'd still come by when it rained, that some part of me would always orbit hers. But words felt too small for what we'd already said without speaking. So I just nodded, memorizing the way she looked at me, steady, grateful, unafraid. When I stepped outside, the world felt different. Lighter somehow. As I walked back down the street, the clouds began to break apart, thin sunlight spilling through. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, a message. "Don't disappear." I didn't reply. Not yet. Some things don't need answers right away. At the corner, I looked back once. She was standing at the window, a hand on the glass, watching the sky like she wasn't sure what came next, only that something would. And that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? More slow burn romances, bittersweet endings, or something completely new?